I'm Brenden Martin. Brenden, guys, if you can imagine what goes on behind the scenes to make this thing happen, Brenden is amazing. These headlines we want to talk about today. Let's just get started. Auburn, #1 seed, Alabama's comeback, SEC playoff shakeup. Coach Ellis Johnson, SEC coaching veteran, going to be on with us. Y'all know him. Talk about playoff expansion and seeding changes. Franz Beard, basketball guru, expert from GatorbaitMedia.com. Take a deep dive into the dominance of SEC basketball, Auburn, Florida, Alabama. How about those Hogs getting the W over Missouri? Yeah, hey, Brenden, in South Carolina, they kept fighting. They got them a win over Texas Saturday. College football playoff expansion talks, SEC and Big Ten. Brenden shaking his head.
It's crazy.
9-game SEC
times
schedule. 9 times. You got to play it 9 times. Hey, LSU's $12 million NIL strategy.
Dude, LSU.
A&M's NIL controversy. Top QB recruit decommits after contract dispute. Can you believe it? So, look, let's get started. But take a picture with your phone of that QR code.
That's right.
Be a subscriber to Sidelines. We do it 260-something times a year. We also have a show on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern, AU Undercover with Ronnie Sanders. Doug Dean's been helping us and is part of that team. Also, Monday through Thursday night, you've got to watch this show. I effing love it. Buddy Martin's show on this channel. I love watching and listening to true grit journalists, the sports writers. Hey, you think newspapers are gone? They ain't. The guys are just on this channel. So check us out every day of the week. We got something good coming up. Let's get out in the bullpen, bring in a badass coaching veteran who's seen a lot and learned a lot and can teach us a lot. I learn something every show, whether we're talking football or basketball, with Coach Ellis Johnson, who's
Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is in the house, folks. It's Tom.
That's right.
Tom Cruise is here.
We need, could you imagine John Brady, who comes on with us on Wednesdays talking basketball on SEC Network, Coach Ellis Johnson? It'd be kind of like, hold on a second now. Now, let me just explain. It would be fantastic having you on, but we get you on this show, and that is thanks to Gary Harris, our good friend at WVUA Channel 23 and Tide 100.9 in Tuscaloosa. Coach, good morning. Welcome aboard. Franz Beard will be on here with us in a second, so it's going to be a fun one. But let's get started. We're going to do some football and basketball, but big headline, SEC and Big Ten met in New Orleans last week talking about major changes for the 2025 playoff format. Could automatic bids favor power conferences? Are you, as they say in the country, are you for it or are you against it?
Well, I'm not so sure on a given year it wouldn't fall out that way anyhow. But I think they're stuck next year, and I can't imagine those other group of fives voting along with them because it has to be a unanimous vote to change anything. Everybody may give in on the 12 teams to 16. I don't know if that's possible with all the logistics that go along with that. But the buys and the conference seedings, they're going to try to put some pressure on those guys, I'm sure. But my understanding is any change they make to it during this 2-year cycle has to be unanimous vote. Okay. And I can't imagine those other conferences going along with that. Now, I think going into the future, they may have them in a bind because they are so powerful now financially. And the danger of, I guess, would be them just splitting off and having their own playoff.
Yeah.
I don't like the way it's all going because I think they better be careful. If those two conferences try to strong arm the rest of them, they can do it. But they're going to damage some things along the way. And they may find out if they're stuck out there by themselves in 3 or 4 years, they may not be as powerful as they think they are. Yeah,
I agree with that. And I also go back, we talk about it. A guy that I'd love to have on the show and pair up with you on a Monday show, and I'm going to work on it with a friend of mine that knows him, is Keith Donovan, ESPN's historian for college football. He refers to in that documentary, the 150 years of college football that was done back in 2019, back in the 70s, and Brenden remembers it, Buddy does, we all do. There was sort of a television aristocracy. You had a lot of the same teams. You could only be on 5 times over a 2-year period. But man, in the 70s, and I grew up in an Auburn family, but Dad did a lot of work in Tuscaloosa, and I got to meet Coach Bryant with Sam Bailey, who was, kind of really ran the athletic department at the Liberty Bowl in 1976. And that was like a bigger than life deal. I went over there and got to shake Coach Bryant's hand. He was, of course, smoking a cigarette in the locker room after the game. I think Alabama won 38-6 over UCLA. But that was a huge game because, by the way, the Liberty Bowl people were geniuses. You had 14 straight weeks of NFL Monday Night Football. They got the next Monday night slot for week 15. Always had big ratings. But I think about how much we grew up. Same thing with baseball, the Big Red Machine with the Cincinnati Reds, the Gas House Gang with, Dizzy Dean and the St. Louis Cardinals. You're right. We better be careful about stuffing ourselves at the feed trough.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's got so much momentum, and money always wins in the long run.
Yeah.
But there's nothing wrong with money. But when you start basing your decisions on money instead of some of the other things that have been important, I just still say college sports fans are not pro sports fans.
No.
And they still want their conferences. They want their rivals. They want those things. And I think you can lose a lot of them if you start just thinking nationally and those two conferences start pulling off and just doing things on their own. I don't know if it'll work.
I agree. I mean, it feels like the XFL. It feels like another, USFL. It just feels like another league, right? It doesn't feel like. And then you've got players talking about, hey, well, professional players who've moved on saying, I got 2 years of eligibility. I'm going to come down and play college sports because I get paid more money.
Yeah.
And that's a thing. And that's happening. I've heard 2 or 3 players doing that. So why not? Now you're just taking advantage of what is out there for you as an athlete. Now who's going to fault them? Nobody. Everyone's going to get theirs, but
don't blame the kids.
Don't blame the kids. But and here's the thing: as a parent, and we're all parents here, sometimes you got to say the thing that you don't necessarily want to say, but it's the right thing to do, right?
Yeah.
This is the hard thing. It's like this is the tough love, right? You're a child. You're an 18-year-old. You're a grown child, okay? And in today's world, it's kind of worse. So most likely, you didn't have a lot of parenting to get here, and we're going to try to look out for you, but we're going to make you put a dollar amount on your head and stop worrying about you as the 18-year-old who needs to develop and understand and learn and grow to become a good a man or woman in society. We're going to fail on that part, which is a huge part of our culture in the SEC and what it means to be in the SEC, because that's all going to change it. And if people don't think that is not going to affect our sports, you're grossly underestimating how that, I think, will play out and missing what it means to be a fan in college athletics.
Absolutely. And as far as the kids, I mean, I've always used a little simple analogy. I enjoy drinking cold beer, and I've had 2 sons, and when they were 19 years old, they probably would have enjoyed drinking cold beer too. But it doesn't, since it was right for me, it doesn't mean it's right for them.
Yeah.
So I just, we're going to do a lot of damage to these kids coming through right now, but it won't show up for about 4 or 5 years, maybe 10 years down the road, and nobody's going to cover it because it's not sexy. It's not
right. But let me ask you both. I didn't interrupt you, Coach, but this is a great point. I wanted to say, what do you think, or what's going to be the catalyst, or what will be? Somebody will have to get hurt or die, or something unfortunate is going to happen from the money or the situation. Something bad will have to happen before change seems to kind of take place. It seems I'm not trying to, put bad juju out there. I'm just saying that's always seems to be the element of change is when something terrible happens.
You just saw Glamour Boy went down to Miami and he's got his car stolen.
Yeah.
And the other girl too, whatever.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, these kids, I know one of the Clemson coaches told me the other day, one of the things, I think somebody came around to speak to all of them, these guest speakers or whatever. One of the things they're having to tell these kids now, hey, look, you got a little money in your pocket. You better be careful what you're wearing. When you wear all these big gold chains and jewelry and you go downtown, you're gonna run into the wrong gang member who wants that necklace.
Yeah.
They're really having to tell them quit wearing the stuff in public.
Yeah.
Well, but Coach, isn't it more about learning? And this is what I guess we all raised in our different cultures and our parents and wherever you're from and all of that. But like, my mom always taught me, I got my signet ring on. She gave me when I was 18 years old, right? She said, when we're walking downtown New York, whatever, turn your ring around, put your wallet in your front pocket. Things that you're going to be a target because you got a polo on your shirt or whatever. These are things you got to think about. And they're not really thinking about that kind of stuff as much because maybe they didn't have that part of the culture, and it's not just all fun and gun. You got you're walking around with money and stuff and bling. People are going to come after you and you're going to be targeted.
Yeah, that's it. And then they're excited. They were able to buy it themselves. It belongs to me, and they want somebody else to see it. It's a status symbol, but they really are. They're being targeted, as you well know. A lot of these pro athletes, these guys are stalking, making sure they know their schedule. And when they're out across the country playing a game one weekend, it's pretty easy target to rob their house.
Right.
And that's on a smaller scale. You're going to have some incidents like that with college kids. And it's already going on. It just nobody really knows about a lot of it. And like I said, some of the damage to these kids and just their human growth and maturity, nobody's going to write about it. There are going to be a lot of them on the streets in about 8 years, but they're only going to be writing about the kid who, got drafted by the Cleveland Browns or whatever.
Yeah. And before we bring in Franz, I'm going to say something about winter timber. And then before I do that, I'll tell you the biggest mistake we're doing, Coach, and I'm going to get to it when we come back. But Winter Timber Outdoors, located in Athens, Alabama, they are open every day of the week. They're a sponsor of SEC Sidelines Sports Network. Bottom line, you're into the shooting sports, and right now we're on the verge of turkey season, still in quail season right now. A few things are as fun as getting on a mule-drawn wagon, old South quail hunt, and get all the gear you need for upland hunting, turkey hunting, duck hunting, deer hunting, pheasant hunting, big game hunting if you're going out west for an elk, or you get an elk tag in Arkansas or Alabama or Tennessee. They'll get you squared away. And these turkey calls, slate calls, the box calls, turkey hunting is a challenge. You need the right camo. You need a turkey gun. You need the right loads. Get everything you need at Winter Timber. 3 things. Number 1, they're expanding. A store is under construction in Auburn, Alabama. They're also looking at locations in SEC schools in the footprint that is the conference, and look for an announcement soon, I believe, on a store coming to the Memphis market. That will be huge. Winter Timber Outdoors, they're proud sponsors of Sidelines. Athens, Alabama, right next to Huntsville, and Town Creek, Alabama. So get over there and get geared up. And before Franz starts, I want to say the biggest mistake I think we're making right now, and I say the biggest, and this comes from my kids telling me this. They're going, Dad, the kids today aren't the problem as much as it is the parents trying to be their best friends. And I'll add to that, we got to quit saying you can't coach kids the way you used to. Coach, I would have loved to play for you because the bottom line is, look at all the guys that played for you that were successful. Franz knows it. Brenden knows it. Buddy knows it. We all know it. By giving these kids a pass, that's like if you have a 12-chapter book and you're going to be tested on it at the end of the semester. Some of these kids now are coming in, they're reading the first couple of chapters, but they're skipping 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, picking up 8 and 9, and then going to 12. You're going to get maybe a C or a D, probably an F on the final. So all these material things are cool. Again, working with people on wealth management for 34 years, I can tell you this, still never had a wealthy family ever in my life, ever once, give their children $5 or $10 million when they're 18 or 19 years old. They don't get it until their 30s, sometimes their 40s. So it's just, we'll get back to it, but we're going to get back into this expansion. Guys, Franz, we've been having a cool talk about, the SEC and the Big Ten trying to monopolize college sports. I don't like it. I don't want to see it happen. money talks. But Franz, throw your opinion in on that, and then we got a bunch to cover, and we'll be doing a rapid fire Monday blitz right after this.
Well, first and foremost, asking for guarantee of, let's say, half of the field, expanding it to 16, half of the field, that's dumb. Why not just say, okay, we're going to do like basketball. Right now, SEC basketball has 6 of the 8 best teams in the country. The only 2 teams that would crack the top 8 from anywhere else are Duke, and Duke would be the 5th or 6th team in the SEC. And Houston is probably better than Duke. Yeah. But those are the only 2 teams that could really play in the SEC. Yeah. And why not just do it like basketball does? Get your best teams. Forget about trying to monopolize it. Maybe the SEC has a year when you only have 2 teams, and all of a sudden you're putting bad teams in. That doesn't make sense. That's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. Get your best teams in. I agree with expansion. I can tell you right now, the SEC and the Big Ten aren't going to stand for this, but the best idea of all, 8 conference champs and 8 at-large teams. Give people say, well, the little guys are never going to do it. Who knows?
That's right.
I remember when Butler made the NCAA championship game twice.
Yeah.
I remember when George Mason showed up against Florida, having taken out 2 or 3 big teams along the way. Florida beat him in the semifinals in 2006, but there's George Mason in there. Let this thing play out. Bring in the best teams. Don't cut off the little guys. That's the first thing I got to tell you.
Yeah.
Because we got to, if the little guys are going to be your farm system, you got to at least give them some incentives.
Yeah.
You got to at least keep them alive.
I agree with that. And we all are old enough to remember the stories of Horatio Alger, rose up against tough circumstances and fought his way out of it. Coach Johnson, I'm on board with Franz, and you said it before Franz came on. So we agree on that. Next question. 9-game SEC conference schedule. Everybody's going to talk about 2020 when we played a 10-game schedule. We also had, few people in the stadiums. But Coach, as a veteran, an SEC with a lot of experience, game in, week out, how tough it is. But considering the playoff expanding, a 9-win team in the SEC with a 9-game schedule would have a really good chance, wouldn't they, of making
the
playoff?
But if they're still alive.
Yeah.
I'm in favor of the 9-game. I think there are teams that are not in favor of it because they don't know if they can hang in there. That's a pretty tough thing, and especially if your school who has a natural rival outside of the conference, like South Carolina has to play Clemson, Florida has to play Florida State, probably Miami. There's some situations like that. I understand that. I think when they first came out with the scheduling model, it was a better rotation, which this is a little bit, I guess, foo-foo, but every kid, if he stayed 4 years, was going to play at every stadium.
Yeah.
And you had a home and away rotation. Everything was pretty good. None of the natural rivals and old rivals were endangered. There were enough games so that you could keep the Georgia Auburns, you could keep the Tennessee Alabamas and all that intact and still get a rotation. When you went to 8, it was not quite as good, but one reason they didn't want to do it is they had contracts with schools for the next 4 years and didn't want to buy them out. But another thing is they just don't want to play that many of the big boys and think they're going to end up with a winning record at the end of the year. So it's kind of a catch-22, but I'm in favor of the 9-game schedule.
All right, let me ask you this. I don't know if either one of y'all saw, when we started the show on the radio back August 9th of 2019, one of my first guests was one of my oldest friends, Uncle Charlie Lloyd Monger from Memphis, Tennessee fan, brilliant mind. He took this formula. I promise you he did this before anybody else had done it that I ever saw. This was in October of 2019. And he had it set up to where if you stayed, like you just referenced, Coach, at an SEC school all 4 years, you would play everybody in the league at least twice as a home and away. And I was like, man, I need to show this to Greg Sankey. And that was, he really did that. He had done this algorithm. He's very smart. He's got a master's in health administration from Tulane and a degree from Tennessee. But the real secret to the sauce was his grandparents lived across the street from General Neyland in Knoxville, and they had season tickets for 93 years on the 50-yard line up at Neyland Stadium. But what makes a conference, Franz, is what Coach just said, is that you travel in mass. I mean, growing up in the SEC like we all did, when you went to a game at Florida or Florida came to your school or Tennessee or whatever, we all knew each other. And without that, you really don't have a conference.
You got to have your rivalries, and you can preserve them. And the 9-game scheduling is the ideal because it does. Home and home, everybody plays everybody, home and home. You know, in 4-year cycles, you will hit every team in the Southeastern Conference. At home, at your place or theirs. And if you want to ensure that your fans travel, give us a schedule like that.
Yeah.
You know, people say, well, we got to protect this break. There's a lot of games in there that are alleged rivalry games that really aren't, okay? But you can turn them into rivalry games if you play them.
Yeah.
You know, Florida has a really good thing going with the Aggies. I think we've played them 5 times, and Florida's like 3-2 against them or something like that. 3-3, 2-3. I don't know the exact numbers, but it's a really good rivalry and it's healthy. We love when goodness, Florida fans are still talking about going there to Kyle Field and watching their damn band at halftime.
Yeah.
You know, you may lose the game, but by golly, it's a great halftime show. Maybe the best in the country. I mean, I keep seeing that damn tuba player to play it and do this twirly thing, and all of a sudden he's going this way. I love it.
Yeah.
But you got to. The thing that's holding it up is ESPN didn't want to pay for the 9th game. But now all of a sudden ESPN's for it. And the reason being is the expanded SEC made so much money for them last year. You look at the ratings, and the SEC teams are like 18 of the 20 best watched games were SEC teams. Okay. Yeah. So now all of a sudden ESPN said, well, hey guys, remember that? Remember we were just kidding there about the 9th game. They're willing to pay now. When they go to that 9th game, here's what it's going to do. It's going to expand the SEC. I would say in 2 years after we go to the 9-game schedule, every SEC team will be pulling in about $90 million a year.
Yeah.
That's not chump change. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
That's more.
Yeah. Franz, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was going to say that's more than go back 15, 20 years ago. A lot of entire athletic departments' budgets were. I can remember not that long ago when Ole Miss and Mississippi State were under $50 million. So that's a great point.
And guys, I think this big money now, it's got a lot to do with this basketball thing going on right now. Big Ten and SEC schools controlling the top 25. I think you got either 2 or 3 ACC schools in the top 25. And one of those is Louisville, which is historically, that's not really an ACC school. But they don't have the money to pay the contracts to get the best coaches, have the best facilities, yada, yada. What was going on maybe 40 years ago, a lot of these SEC schools didn't care about if they had a basketball team. Now they're getting a piece of that pie, and it's TV money for football. And even North Carolina's had to get in line and realize that they're no longer the big boy in the ACC because nobody – I'm a little bit hyping it, but nobody cares about basketball anymore. It's football money, especially for the TV contracts.
Well, here's the number I'll throw at y'all. $172 million in 2023 is what Texas made off of football. The highest grossing revenue-wise basketball program in America was Kansas at $38 million. So
Exactly.
I mean, and it's a big deal. But I also remember, guys, back in '92 when Florida State joined the ACC and spurned the SEC, although they were offered by everybody to come. There was talk. Well, the basketball money is so much bigger in the ACC, and I remember saying, "Are you out of your mind?" But there were people that believed it. But I got a question here. We'll answer it, and Coach Johnson just referenced it. I'll throw it to you, Franz. Who gets the 4 number 1 seeds in basketball? Auburn, Florida, Bama, Vols, Houston, Duke. And I watched yesterday. Man, Rick Pitino at the Garden, that's magic. And Danny Hurley, one of the more likable coaches in basketball. And going at it. And you know, St. John's just stomped them. Don't rule them out. How many teams, different schools? Let's see, Kentucky, Providence, Louisville, St. John's won't be long. This is year 2. Don't rule them out. And as long as Tom Izzo is coaching, they've been to 9 Final Fours, but Franz kind of
and they'll never win another one. I'm sorry, most overrated coach in America. And I'm telling you, he's a good coach, but he won 1 in a year.
2000.
2000. And won 1 in 25 years. And he hangs around. And he gets favorable scheduling, and he plays in the Big Ten, which helps. The Big Ten is the most overrated conference in basketball in America. How many Big Ten teams have won a national championship since 2000? Think about it, guys. Tell me one.
There was 0?
You got it.
0. Yeah.
0.
I think, yeah. And there's no producer telling me through my ear that number.
It's 0.
I couldn't help you. I know that.
The Big Ten is vastly overrated.
Yeah.
You know, the ACC, you got, to their credit, Duke and Carolina have held that standard high for them. Right now, Carolina's kind of down, and I think Hubert Davis, as nice a guy as he is, I think Hubert's about to get canned, and I don't know who they're going to get. They're going to have to go somewhere outside the program because there's nobody left who was in Dean's lineage.
Yeah.
To lift them up. And it's the same thing that happened at Indiana. They ran Bobby Knight out, and now the good coaches that are in his lineage won't go to Indiana.
Yeah.
I mean, you look, Dusty May, the most natural coach to be at Indiana, just signed has a long-term extension at Michigan, etc. Coach here is so right. The money is football money, but they're infusing it into basketball.
Exactly.
And you look at what's happened in the Southeastern Conference. 25 years ago, nobody would have dreamed that Auburn would have an arena where the worst seat in the whole place is 43 feet from the court.
Yeah.
You think about that. 43 feet away. You're right there. Ole Miss takes a look at what Auburn does, and they say, okay, we'll get the same people who built the Auburn one, and we'll just add a few fancy schmancy things to go with it to make ours even better.
Yeah.
They're talking about Arkansas. The gazillionaires are saying, well, that gun our place only seats 19,000, and hell, it's only about 13, 14 years old. We need a new one. We'll let the women play here. I mean, and so forth. Everybody's getting into it, and here's Florida playing in that dump called the O-Dome, which blows my mind. But anyway, that's another story for another day.
Well, let me ask you something, Franz. And we're going to start doing some back and forth fast. You're right. Architecturally, that's a marvel what they did at Auburn. I know Jan Cowart, is architect. He's and coach, he's the last guy who started 4 years in football at Auburn and got a degree in architecture. And he's one of my dad's heroes. He's just, but I know Jan and his brother Philip. They're from over in the Black Belt from Selma, but they their grandfather lived in a little town called Leesburg, Florida. Great bass fishing down there, those Florida bass. But this is a great conversation. I'm getting some stuff from a viewer, Wesley Duncan, great friend of mine, who lives in Fort Lauderdale. What a life. And by the way, do you notice the palm trees in the background of Franz is there? I'm already feeling warmer up here. It's going to warm up to 38 today up here, Franz. So.
Well, heavens, we're going to make it up to 65 today, but it's going to rain all day long and probably into tomorrow.
We still got snow everywhere. Hey,
but
here's
yesterday it was 76 degrees. The sun was shining. And my gosh, it was just absolutely lovely here.
Well,
I feel bad for everybody who's cold. So, but
the Ducks came back. Of course, it's duck season ended January 31st. They have
Ducks
calendars.
Guns to let them shoot back.
That's right. Hey, now Wesley Duncan is telling me, I hear Cooper Flagg is going to stay in school one more year. UCLA and Alabama are offering $4 million for that, but that's crazy. All right, let's get into this. I'm going to ask both of y'all some topics, and I'll start with you, Coach. LSU looking to invest $12 million NIL strategy in football. Texas A&M has a top quarterback recruit decommits. Well, hell, that's what happened with Bryce Underwood, who was committed to LSU. Then he flips over to Michigan. As a coach, the relationship and you got out when you retired, there was texting and all that stuff. I mean, have your fingers recovered? I mean, or did you do auto text? Because I can't imagine. You know how when you hear a song and you're laying in bed at night sleeping and you're hearing it over and over and over in your head. I woke up about 3:30 this morning and I was hearing that Huey Lewis song, Huey Lewis in the News, same phone number and the same address. And it's a song. I heard it the other day and I can't get it out of my head, but I would think you could go borderline Section 8 recruiting with all the social media stuff today. I would guess that.
We didn't do a lot. We had people that were doing it in the office for us.
Okay.
Two things about technology. Number one, I'm a dinosaur. But number two, I can handle a cell phone better than any kid I've got. And the reason is because whenever that stuff started coming out, and it was obviously an advantage or a convenience for recruiting, and we got the best. We always got whatever was the latest thing. They brought it in there and showed us how to cut it on. And if it wasn't behaving correct, you pick up the phone and, hey, Joe, come back down to the IT guy.
Yeah.
Get this phone straight. So
yeah.
As far as using one, I can go. But as far as kind of figuring one out and getting it fixed or something, I'm used to the IT guy coming down the hall and fixing it for me. Just give me another one.
Yeah.
I lost my phone when we were in Mississippi when I first got to Auburn. All four of us on the defensive staff went over to see Chris Jones, tried to get him to visit.
Yeah.
We couldn't turn him. And, but I left my phone in a bathroom in a little old country store. Didn't realize it till I'm down the road. We go back and the phone's gone. Of course, the guy at the store said, I don't have any clue where it went. Turns out some Mississippi State fan found it. And they went through it before they told me they had it. But the bottom line is we called Auburn as we're driving from that location to the next. And I told them what happened. When I got back to Auburn that night, we drove back. I went in the hotel where I'm staying, and they had a brand new iPhone, and it was already loaded from the cloud, had all my contacts and everything else in it. So, and I'm like, when I got out and didn't have anybody to do all that stuff, oh God, it was just like a nightmare.
Coach, that is a cool story because you cannot imagine the data and information that would be on there. And it's insane. All right. And Coach, and I know you say you don't watch as much basketball, but you know sports, people. Franz, ditto on that. You watch a lot. We all do. Let's get started. And football. I like going back and forth with this football, basketball because the football recruits are at the basketball games. And Franz, I wouldn't hold my breath in that they're going to build a new O-Dome. I think money will go into buying more, talent and stuff like that. Florida, right now, I mean, those are the top three teams, or and Houston's really good. Duke is really good, but they're not playing night in and night out. Iron sharpens iron, friends. Friends, give me your teams. First off, I'd like to hear your top 5 SEC players. Then I'm going to get into coach on the mental part of it because, again, being a coach, I've got some questions for him, and I know he'll be able to answer them, but I want to hear his answers. But give me your top 5 players in the SEC through this point on Monday morning, February 24th at 9:35 a.m. Eastern.
Janai Browne, number 1. Walter Clayton, junior, number 2. And anybody who thinks it's any different than that is absolutely, you got dropped on your head too many times when you were an infant. Yeah. You're going to have to have Wade Taylor on there. I mean, the Aggies have lost some ball games, but my gosh, that guy can play. Mark Mitchell of Mizzou would be in there, and as much as I hate to admit it, Chaz Lanier up at Tennessee, he's just such a pure shooter that what do you have, 6 for 7 in the first half the other night, Saturday against the Aggies.
Yeah.
But those are your probably your 5 best. Adu Thiru at Arkansas is an absolute beast. Asa Newell is going to be. South Carolina may have as good a player as there is in the league, but they're so bad as a team, and that's the big kid down low. Gosh, he plays for such a bad team. I feel bad for him.
And I agree with that. I think Lamont Paris is doing an unbelievable job holding those guys together. I mean,
well, he got to win, so he doesn't.
I know.
He doesn't throw a bagel up there. But look what Dennis Gates did last year, from 0-18 to a team that nobody wants to play now.
No.
They got a guy named Caleb Grill, who is like Chaz Lanier, who goes into these shooters' comas when he starts throwing stuff up, and whatever he throws up goes in. When he gets hot, he's unstoppable. Alabama is one of the 4 best teams in the country, but they can't play any defense.
No.
Tennessee is one of the 4 best teams in the country, but they struggle when they're away from Thompson Bowling. Florida and Auburn are the 2 best teams in the country, bar none. Period.
All right. Coach Johnson, looking at this time of the year, we talk about the grind. How much can a coach do to talk to these players, or can he say too much about pacing yourself because you're down to the last 4 or 5 league games? You look at Auburn, Florida, and Alabama, they're all fighting to win the SEC championship. They're all still alive. Kind of put that in perspective for the fans that are watching.
Well, it'd be hard for me to relate to that, in basketball, the number of games they play, and then the travel and all that type of thing. I actually played freshman basketball when I was in college. That's a funny story to itself. But I loved basketball, but I was never good enough to chase it. So I didn't play beyond that. But I always liked meeting and getting to be friends with basketball coaches. Rick Barnes is a good friend. We were at Clemson together.
Yeah.
Used to love to talk to Frank Martin before he was fired at South Carolina, which was a mistake. But anyhow, Frank's a great guy. But back to your point, I really have thought about that before, because I think that would be a really key thing. The travel and the number of games they play. And then, of course, as it gets closer to the end, the games almost all become a playoff game.
Yeah.
And, any game could knock one of these guys out of a number 1 seed or knock them out of the 64 or whatever. So I don't know what the answer to it is. I've never had to do it. Football-wise, it was more of just making sure we stayed healthy. The mental part was not that big a deal because you regrouped every week. And you're on to another team, and you're spending 4 days on them, and then you go play them. So it's kind of it's a crescendo of things, if you will. Baseball coach at Clemson, longtime baseball coach, Bill Wilhelm, very successful. And when he told me one time, he said, I don't know how you guys do it in football. He said, each one of those games is like playing for your life. And I said, well, Coach, I don't know how y'all do it. I said, y'all play 4 or 5 times a week. And, you know, I don't know how you keep them rolling. He said, we just play our way in and out of slumps. You guys, you got to get them straight every week, because if you lose 2 games, it might be the end of your season.
Yeah, that's a great take on it. And let me say something brilliant take about another one of our sponsors, Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company, folks, located on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. I've got to go out there today. Man, they've got a 50% off sale going on right now with this new stuff: Seeger rugged outdoor gear, Filson, Pendleton, Schaefer, STS, Ariat, Barber. They've got luggage from Barber, from STS. It's good looking. And look at those hats, man. They got some awesome hats. Premium boots, jeans, Western wear. They got over 7,000 pairs of men's and women's boots, and these Anderson Bean boots. I got to tell you, and I got them on right now, the Danner Trail shoes. They've got Danner snake boots, which I have a pair of. I need them around here. Not right now. Snakes are all sleeping, but you can get a look at more boots than you can anywhere else. I'm talking good looking boots. They even do some concerts live from the boot room occasionally back there that are awesome. Okay. The jean selection out there, Devil Dog jeans, they're great. If you're a size 38, you wear a 36. See, 2 sizes lower by putting them on. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. So I love having them as a sponsor. And, you know, guys, you look, I feel like the weatherman behind me, this property protected by Sasquatch. I'm starting to notice everywhere you go, there's Sasquatch stuff. But the big story, and another one in these headlines, you know, Brendan's talking about, look around at the level of excitement, Franz. Coaches talk. I love that comparison. Baseball playing in and out of slumps. Football staying healthy. Basketball, you know, they're all different. And you look at the coaches. In year 3 at Florida, look at Todd Golden. Last year he played for the conference championship in the tournament in Nashville. Hopefully they'll keep it in Nashville. That's a great venue. But right now, which team you think is at the biggest risk to have a collapse here in the final stretch of 4 or 5 games in the SEC? I'm talking about the leaders in the clubhouse.
Well, right now, your top 4 teams are going to still be your top 4 teams.
Okay.
The ones you get, it's not the top 4. You know, Florida, Auburn, Alabama, Tennessee, they're there. Okay. Then you got then you have the Aggies and you have Missouri. You have Ole Miss, Mississippi State. They're on another, those 4 are on another tier. Down below that, you got Arkansas, which all of a sudden can beat everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guarantee you there's some buyer's remorse up at Kentucky. I can't believe they're putting Kentucky still as a 3 seed, but Kentucky, when they're healthy, they're really good. Kentucky's on that, probably on that same tier with Mississippi State. Those 5 teams are struggling now. And all you got to do is take a look at who Kentucky's got to play this week. I mean, Kentucky has got to they have to play. Let's see. I'll tell you in a second. But they're 2-6 on the road, and they're not that good. Okay, Kentucky plays at Oklahoma Wednesday. That's a win, so that'll be number 19. But then they got to play Auburn on Saturday. Holy cow. Tennessee's got to play at LSU, but then Saturday they get Alabama. So you've got these schedules like this. The teams at the top are still going to be the teams at the top.
Yeah.
Mississippi State, though, could drop a game or 2. You got Vanderbilt trying to get up there. Vanderbilt 6-8 really needs at least one more win. On and on and on like that. I think the Ole Miss has to play Auburn on the road this week. I mean, my gosh, the Aggies went 0-2 last week.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden there's kind of as good as they can be, and the emphasis is on can be. They got to play a Vanderbilt team that can beat them. And then they got to play at Florida Saturday, and they're going to lose to Florida at the O-Dome.
Yeah.
It is as Coach said, it is a dog-eat-dog type of conference. Everybody's going to beat up on everybody. You're going to have I think the two teams at the top are going to win road or home or road. You're not going to beat Tennessee at Thompson Bowling, period. I mean, that's just not going to happen. Alabama, if somebody wants to run with them, they're in trouble for the most part. But if you want to defend the three and then rebound, they're beatable. So, but that's the way the league is. It's structured like this. You got to build a team that's got a roster for all situations. And the only two rosters that are built for all situations right now are Florida and Auburn.
Yeah, and Florida is the one team that has five big guys with Micah Handglotten coming back out there and Alex Condon when he's healthy. So that's a scary scenario. So I like where we're heading. I mean, Coach, you've been at a lot of schools and seen the relationship between football and basketball. Kentucky. Mark Stoops has been there. I think this is year 13 for Mark Stoops coming up at Kentucky. He took the A&M job, we thought, but then he came right back. I don't know if then you got to, do we trust him? I mean, there's all kind of things he's had to deal with since then, but trying to build a football program in today's environment compared to basketball, there's a lot fewer players. You like the 9-game deal. Let's talk about something that you brought up last week, and it's a story. Texas, Southern Cal, Nebraska, getting rid of spring football. And I agree. The spring games are, basically there's no need in them. I think that you can have better practices, but how long do you think it'll take before everybody gets like, we're done with this stuff? I mean, kind of what Lane Kiffin did last year was the beginning of it, I think.
Yeah, I do something on Fridays with a local guy out of Columbia, and we were talking the other day, and for the last 3 or 4 years, we've been talking about how they need more practices in the spring, and they need, maybe let them go scrimmage teams outside of their own scrimmage. That's the only level. High school can do it, pros can do it. So I was in the camp that with all these new players coming in with the portal and the signees coming in January instead of in the summer, you got so many new faces, you need more spring ball. And so this thing kind of hit me funny when I see them canceling spring games. But then I really thought about it because it was Sark who last did it, and he was talking about, hey, we just got through playing about a month ago, and these guys have played X number of games, I guess 15 or 16. He said, they don't need this right now. And I had never thought about that. But now everybody didn't play up to the date that Sark and them did.
That's right.
And then, I thought about some of the other things. The coach at Nebraska saying, I don't want to put my players on display because somebody's going to tamper with them and take them in the portal in a month. I don't know about that reason. Hell, anybody can get film on you and study the players. Right. But, it's crazy. It's kind of a catch-22. Do we need more spring practice because all these roster turnovers? If you got an untested quarterback, you'd love to have about 30 practices in the spring.
Yeah.
If he's there. But he may not be there. He may be coming in the summer.
That's right.
I don't know what the answer is. But before they cancel, I know like Alabama, they got to where they were holding the spring game and really making it sort of an open door policy. That was for all the fans that could never afford season tickets.
Yeah.
And it was very important to them because there are a lot of folks who pull for the Tide. They can't even get tickets. because either one, they can't afford it, or number two, there's a waiting list.
Yes.
There are people who won't join Tide Pride because they can't guarantee them tickets. So that's where those guys got to be a part of the program. So I kind of hate to see that disappear. But I'll tell you now, the whole time we coached, we hated that last game. We hated it. We were almost like we just knew somebody was going to get hurt, and we were going to lose them for the early part or the whole next season. So, I'm kind of torn between the two. I just don't want to see things keep diminishing, even spring games. I think sometimes we're going down a slippery slope. But I'll be honest with you, as coaches, we never did like it.
Well, compromise is typically the victory of cowards. But in this case, I'll throw something. I read an article in the spring of 1980 in the Auburn Plainsman student newspaper. And the writer back 45 years ago interviewed then head football coach Doug Barfield from Oak Grove, Mississippi, and Oak Grove, Alabama. I thought he went to Southern Miss, though. I know that. But Doug Barfield said, hey, back then it was a 10-team SEC. And he said, why don't we don't play Kentucky and we don't play Ole Miss every year. Why don't we play them in a spring game? He goes, I think you could get 45 or 50,000 people to come to that. Why not? And so that's more in line with what you're saying, Coach, is that would be more interesting. And it's almost like a spring league of football for college football fans.
Everybody, pros get to scrimmage other teams.
Yeah.
High schools get to scrimmage other teams. Colleges can't scrimmage other teams. It never has made sense to me.
Here's what makes sense.
Yeah.
Eliminate the Division I AA game during the regular season. Play that in the spring. You'll sell the damn place out. Let me put it this way. Here's University of Florida. We bring in Bethune-Cookman, or we bring in FAMU.
Yeah.
They're going to bring tons of fans. They're going to bring their damn band. Hell, we'll have a great halftime. Nothing more. And you'll sell the place out. You can pay the $500,000 or $800,000, whatever, to the Division I AA school. If you lose, it doesn't count. It doesn't count on your strength of schedule, everything like that. Eliminate that. That's why when the 9-game SEC schedule kicks in and looks good, because now all of a sudden you got 9 SEC games. So you got three others. Okay, you got Florida State. That for Florida, that makes 10. So then you can help out the group of 5 schools. You can play Bowling Green. You can play James Madison. You can bring somebody like that in. Give them a payday too. Give your fans a better game than they're going to get with Western Walla Walla from the Rattlesnake Conference up there in the Northwest. Bring in somebody like that, and it makes sense. That's why it ain't going to happen, though. It makes sense.
It does. It makes a lot of sense. Coach, I'm for playing those kind of games, but I am with you. The intra-squad game, there's just nothing. I mean, fans leave with either one of the two extremes. We're horrible on defense or we're great on offense, and you're really neither.
We used to have a lot more players back in the old days. Used to have freshman football. There was a need for spring football. But you're out there banging on your own players. And sooner or later, you're going to get injuries. And I'm not saying you wouldn't if you scrimmaged outside of your team, but you lessen the number of contacts and chances when you scrimmage against somebody else. Yeah. While we're on football, though, real quick, Franz and Brenden, you Florida guys, they just made Russ Calloway coordinator down there. And to tell you how old I am, Russ used to cut my grass in Tuscaloosa when he was a little boy. Neil would take him around the neighborhood with the lawnmower, and they could sit there and watch him cut grass and make him cut the whole neighborhood just about.
That's awesome. I mean, I remember Neil Calloway was from Macon, Georgia, Southwest High School, because Coach Dot recruited him to Alabama. Hell of an
offensive line coach I've ever been around, and I really enjoy working with him.
Yeah, that's a cool story. I mean, I think the takeaway here, guys, we got a few minutes before we are going to wrap up, but I like this back and forth football, basketball, man, because both of y'all are so damn smart and have such a depth of knowledge. And let me say something real quick about another sponsor. We're going to come back because I got a couple of more for you. Landers Ford, Memphis.com, folks. I stopped by there Friday. Audrey and I did, to see Brad Bellamy, the general manager, and we visited with him in his office. I took him some crumble cookies, and what a great guy. You will love working. Ask for Brad Bellamy, the general manager at Landers Ford, Memphis, located at Poplar and Houston Levy. There, in where Memphis meets Collierville. It's an awesome dealership, a huge lot, and you're safe. They got great security there. They got a great service department, great staff. You'll love working with them. There's opportunities to save a lot of money. These F-150 Lightnings, Expeditions, it is Ford Truck Month sales event. Lots of opportunities to save off of MSRP. They'll work with you, their finance department, on the credit. And look at those Broncos, man. They've got a bunch of them. Good looking vehicles. And the Ford Escape, you pick truck, car, SUV. I drive a Ford F-150. I absolutely love it. 4-wheel drive with those all-terrain tires. You don't get stuck. Some people might. I don't. I feel for you. Get out to LandersFordMemphis.com and take $500 off for SEC Sidelines audience members. If you've been buying vehicles out there at Landers, keep buying them and send your friends. They will do a battery test. They will take care of you, and they'll pick you up in the service department. And also, folks, remember, get out there, Matei's Garage, Tom Martin's Body Shop, Web-Footed Kennels in Jonesboro, Arkansas. We have great sponsors. You can find them all at sidelines.live. But I love this rapid fire. I'm going to ask Coach Ellis, and then I'm going to ask Franz. Coach, what's the biggest thing that you're looking for in the spring, football-wise, in the SEC? A yes or no, definite on a 9-game schedule? Is that it?
I think the 9-game schedule makes a lot of sense. And if you're talking about when you say the spring, I assume you're talking about their meeting.
Yeah, spring meetings, spring practices, anything.
Well, the practices, it would depend on each team. They got their own objectives they've got to accomplish. But in general, in spring practice, what you're always trying to do is get young players, the work, and find out if they're ready to become a player and move into the depth chart, et cetera. If you got new staff members, especially coordinators, you got to get a little bit of your scheme done.
Yep.
Very hard to do too much of that because of the numbers on the field and all that good stuff. But that's basically what you're doing. And what we discussed earlier, you can't practice football and not play football. But you're always concerned about injuries in the spring. And so you're trying to work as hard as you can work, but not lose any players.
Yeah, it's the injury bug. And again, the spring meetings in Destin around Memorial Day, that's going to be here 3 months from now. And
yeah, that's going to be a big deal, I think, because of what we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
What goes on at their spring meetings is going to certainly be a reflection of what's going on between the Big Ten and the SEC right now.
Yeah. And again, I'm with Franz. Again, you better not you don't want to shut out the so-called just the programs that are not as big. I mean, you don't want to shut them out. What makes sports fun is what Franz said about George Mason, about Butler. 2 years in a row they played for the national championship. We all know the Butler Fieldhouse is where one of the best movies I've ever seen with Gene Hackman, Hoosiers, was filmed. I've been there. It's an incredible arena. Franz Beard, what's your big story as we go into the spring, as you jealously flaunt your tropical weather in our faces as we're cold?
We'll call you back in July.
Yeah, we'll call you back. I like Coach. We're going to get even with you.
Well, here's the deal. If you're, I'm one of these people, having lived 2 years in Korea. I was teaching at a university there, and having experienced 6-month winters, which they have. I'm a firm believer that if you throw off the sheet and you break into a sweat, it's going to be a good day. So we get a lot of those in Florida. The big thing to me in spring is going to be watching quarterback development throughout the SEC. I think you got DJ Lagway, who's going to be and Garrett Nussmeier. I think most people believe those two and Arch Manning are going to be the top 3 quarterbacks in the league. But you've got Oklahoma, which brings in this guy from Washington State, who I guarantee you is an absolute stud. And Oklahoma is going to be the team that this year everybody's going to say, well, we beat the crap out of them last year, and then they're going to get them this year. And Brent Venables is taking over the defense himself. Pretty good football coach right there.
Yeah.
And now he's got an offense. He's got a quarterback who can make the plays. Okay. They're going to be better. But you look around there, it's going to be what happens with the quarterbacks. Alabama is going to end up with a freshman quarterback. Holy cow. Georgia, they can just tell me all that they want to about how Gunnar Stockton did this in the SEC championship game. But what I saw in the playoffs is not a guy that can win 12 games for you.
Yeah.
He's not. So they're probably going to be looking at a freshman quarterback too. Lenora Sellers is at South Carolina, really good quarterback.
Yeah.
I'm still not sold that Nico up at Tennessee is worth $8 million. If I'm Tennessee and I had a chance to trade for Diego Pavia, I'd take Diego Pavia every day of the week. But this is the big thing. You look at what's going to happen here, and how the quarterbacks develop is going to determine what the SEC does next year. This past year was not a good year for SEC quarterbacks. It really wasn't.
Yep.
Hey, and we'll wrap it up. But Coach, that's a great series of points both of y'all made, and I keep thinking about Lenora Sellers. What Roman Harper said on the show, he goes, "Here's this big guy who, when he's on his way down, he can get off a pass and complete it. That's how strong he is." But in the bowl game, didn't you say you were concerned about? I think that was after he got his big financial.
Well, I thought he was a different player, and I don't know whether Mike was trying to get him to be more patient in the pocket and learn how to be a good third down quarterback, or what it was. But he never did really try to take that game over with his legs, and whether it was just not making the decisions to do that, or did they are they trying to change him a little bit? I just don't know. Mike's a hell of a coach, and he'll help that kid, but the kid's just got to be what he is, and 75% of that is his feet. He's not an accurate thrower.
Yeah, and if I had an opportunity to put a slogan up before a team ran out on the locker room from my field, I'd put up a slogan from Ralph Shug Jordan that said, "Don't wait to be great. It's 5 minutes from kickoff. I need you right now." So get out there and get going. But hey, I'm looking for that coach that's going to go retro on us and wear the old flop hat, on the sidelines with a windbreaker. I'm ready for some old school to come back in coaching. But awesome stuff, Coach Ellis Johnson down in right outside of Clemson. But awesome. And tell Dabo Swinney, anytime two of y'all on here together would be incredible. Franz Beard, GatorVetMedia.com. Brenden Martin, executive producer extraordinaire. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. We're the most blessed people in the history of the world. Look for opportunities every day to help others. And you know what? Find excuses to win. Thanks for watching. Share the show. We'll see you in the morning. Have a great day.